Robbie, it's so nice to have you here today. I appreciate you for jumping on for this collaboration event and sharing with us your wisdom and your inspiration behind a lot of this different technologies. For everyone who's listening at home or over the phone, or if they're listening via the recording, today it's going to be me and Brenda. My name is Brenda Legal, and I'm one of the I think the cogs behind the First Alternatives team. And what we're going to do is we're going to be going through each of the technologies and interviewing Robbie here about the technology and how we can actually implement it in our daily lives to find, better purpose, better intent, and better health. So with that, how you doing, Robbie?
I'm great, and thank you for having me on and giving me an opportunity to talk firsthand to your community and share some of the wisdom. I'd like to say the wisdom of ancients, suggesting that I might be one of them, but yeah, any and all opportunities to work with you and your group and your team and your community is really an honor for me. So thank you for having me on.
That's perfect. Yeah. And I know one of the I think one of the the two paragraphs I love hearing you say, and I don't know if it's the voice that you have or just the style you say it in, but um, I think it was a year ago, relatively this month, that you were talking to one of our classes and you were talking about um, the technology that you advocate for and utilize in your daily life. They're not artificial. And they are artificial in how you produce them, but they're not, the intent isn't to create an abnormal, unnatural healing process, but to create a healing process that's naturally integrated into the body. So, um, behind the intent of a lot of your technologies, how would you explain your modalities really interacts with the body from a natural perspective?
Great question. Okay, so I guess it comes down to some of the fundamental principles or what I call the pillars behind our tech. So as a bio researcher and scientist, I study nature, how the plant and animal kingdom interact with nature. And I also study ancient cultures of the world, both expired cultures and current ones, from the perspective of what anecdotal or ceremonial type of health applications integrating both health and nature in mind. And so with that, because it's very interesting, like it's not one of the devices or products, supplements that we talk much about, but we got interested in pain management. And one of the things that that the areas of photon biomodulation, harnessing full spectrum infrared frequencies, that it does one of the where a lot of our devices are listed as class 2 medical with FDA, because from a business perspective, I thought I've got all this research, I have all the science, and I have all these unique technologies. What's the best way to get that out to the world? And so for the first 10 years of the genesis of Therasage, we did a B2B relationship, and the other B was the healthcare practitioner world. And so I thought, if I came up with a unique device that shifts your physiology, how could I get that to the mainstream public? And so, for instance, if Dr. Brian had a flowing practice and he saw 10,000 patients, and then he saw the importance of integrating our technology along with what his current protocols are and his own world, like his own science and his own understanding of health, that if we could improve the efficacy of his flow, then through him, we were able to touch whatever his flow was, 10,000 patients a year. And I thought that was a much more beneficial way to express our work out to the world, in a sense. And so we spent 10 years, I spent 10 years, the first 10 years, I'm talking 25 years ago, on stage talking to doctors about the subtle energies in nature. I'm talking about the allopathic community that basically had no interest in what I was talking about at all. So it was quite a lonely experience back then. And I'm very joyful for the world that we're in today, because everyone's sort of waking up or catching up to the powers of nature and natural healing. And mostly augmenting our own body's innate ability to heal. And um, so that in that frame of reference, um, we look to try to bring a little bit of nature through our technology into your home. For all of us with busy lifestyles that can't really afford to be in light at the right time of day for the right amount of time to get certain wavelengths to create physiological events. And so we start with that as a sort of a core. I call it like the hub of the wagon wheel, right? And then the spokes of the wheel have to do with all of the variations and derivations of protocols involved with it and collateral accessory type of devices that will when you that you can create that synergistic effect of bringing more things in to again recruit the body's own innate ability to heal, which for people that are most people listening today, you're all that what I call the one percenters. We're all speaking the same language or playing the same music. But you step outside of this world that we're in, or our collective, and you talk to the mainstream public, they know what they know, which is everything that they see on TV from the drug and pharmaceutical advertisements. They're told not to go out and commune in nature. Basically, everything that could possibly allow our bodies to heal themselves in a way is where they're diverting the general public's mentality and away from. And so I have my work cut out for me because we are on a path and we're unwavering in the things that we do. And I'm enjoying the time we're in right now because I really feel like it's an awakening or a quickening of people's awareness to the importance of subtle energies. And maybe through the COVID experience, many of the mainstream public are now considering other ways to address their own healthcare or take more responsibility for their healthcare. And all of that is very resounding to me at this point in time.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I definitely feel like we're hitting a wave of I don't like to use the consciousness like idea where it's like, oh, everyone's awakening in their consciousness and everyone's leveling up their assumed ideologies to accept that there are healing modalities that are effective, that are non-dependent on pharmaceuticals, right? That are non-industrialized, and those notions where you really have to rely on essentially these massive I'd say they're organizations, but um, these degenerative chains of healing modalities with a lot of side effects, right? It's like I definitely feel that one of the things that really drew me to Therasage and the products is this uh, internal and principled intent to stay within nature, and within the bounds of what nature can provide, and then to emulate and amplify that intent and that procedure. Because I can understand why the medical industry wants to stay away from nature because it's natural to die, right? And they want, and then in their head it's a natural in their head it's a principled process to make things unnatural, right? To put you in states that are just incredibly prolonged and painful in some cases, especially if you get opioid dependency issues where your nervous system's not trusting yourself anymore, your body's just not working like it should, and then you're going down this long chain of torture, I think. But there's natural ways to heal, and that's part of what we're doing here today is finding those natural ways to integrate with the body and restore many different faculties of healthy living, right? So, um, as far as your intent on going about and improving the healthcare landscape, I know that you first did like you have a background in medical billing and a background in medical technology, and so you've seen what people have been dealing with a lot, right? So you know exactly why this technology works and why we are hitting this wave, and that a lot of different products are helping many people specifically in things that are actually causing problems. So what are some of the main things that you find that you're targeting and that you're able to help with and be successful with in terms of the medical landscape right now?
Hmm. Um, but I just want to backstep
Yep.
half a step by saying I'm not opposed to pharmaceuticals and synthetics and medications and the
Hmm.
allopathic way. I just think that there's a place for it, and it's not the primary place. The
Hmm.
primary is what we can do to recruit our own body's natural ability to heal
Hmm.
and give the body the tools to do that. And when we need intervention, then we go for it. I often take this view, and it's kind of a funny spot. Um, as a device developer, I'm very much in the moment. I'm here today. I'm present. I'm in the breath. But succinctly, at the very same time, I'm also looking at, and it's a dialogue that goes in my head constantly, of what the world would be like a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now, if we had a certain technology. And if you take that perspective, imagine what we think about the way that medical practices were done in the medieval times. Like you mentioned the word torture. How do you think the view of the world would be 10 or 50 years from now, looking back at the way medical practices are being done currently? It might be the same view we take about the torture chambers and the things that were done 50 years ago or 100 years ago, right? And so um, staying within the playbook of nature to me seems like, next to the Bible, probably the ones that has been around the longest. And so if I can align myself with my technology that follows that pattern, I know that I'm in the right place. So so we came to our orientation because 25 years ago, my oldest child, my daughter, contracted Lyme disease, and having a medical background, and Lyme being somewhat under popularized, politicized. There wasn't enough money in research in Lyme. There wasn't enough interest. Lyme mimics many other diseases. It's a very complicated disease. And so it was mostly ignored by the infectious disease and the allopathic community. Uh, and so I had this conflict because internally, I'm talking about just my family, because I didn't I didn't align with the allopathic approach, um, and there wasn't much research on it. So I actually took it upon myself, having a medical background and having a personal interest because of my family orientation, to step away from what was generally accepted as practices for Lyme disease then and even now, and then be unwavering in identifying the ways that I could help my daughter help herself with her own health challenge. And so with that, I did what most practitioners did. I took a look at the way she was presenting herself. What were her symptoms? And she expressed high levels of pain, challenges with cognition. She had what I interpreted as high levels of toxicity and inflammation. And so when I unpacked the way she was expressing herself, I centered on toxification, and looked and studied, did deep dives into the best ways to detox. And that's when I discovered that there are light frequencies pointing directly towards the full spectrum infrared wavelengths of sunlight that will actually mobilize all the toxins in your body. And I said, well, here it is. It's being delivered to me on a plate. Like, I'm looking for a natural remedy. I'm looking for a natural event that both supports the plant and animal kingdom. And yet no one else is looking at it, because 25 years ago, the only health applications for full spectrum infrared were being used by the sports medicine doctors to heal players that got injured, either to lower their pain thresholds and to augment, along with other interventions, like combining other interventions, to get the players back on the field quicker. And so that perked my interest, because pain was one of my challenges. But mostly what I loved was that these wavelengths, these beautiful wavelengths of sunlight, will actually create a vibration in the body, which we call resonance. It's a vibration in your body. And that vibration sort of breaks the bond and the relationship between the toxins and where they're stored in your tissues and even down to a cell level. So I thought, um, why not investigate, dive deeper into that? And when what that did was brought me to China. I interviewed 65 factories, spent 3.5 months in China, found two that I wanted to work with, and I started developing devices for personal use. We had such great results that the doctors that we didn't have telemed then are the most prominent Lyme literate doctor, Dr. Joseph Birascano, still probably is considered one of the greatest minds in Lyme, was our primary doctor for Julia. And he was in New York. We're living in Florida. So back then we didn't have telemed. So we basically went up to New York every 6 weeks to tweak her protocol, came back down to Florida. We had a corresponding practitioner that worked with the practitioner in New York, pain management doctor, psychiatrist, like you name it. I mean, at some point we had 6 different practitioners that were managing Julia's healthcare, and none of them talked to one another, and all of them were prescribing medications for her.
Mm.
And so it was kind of like a perfect storm, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
for the playbook of not treating your symptoms all that well. So when I saw that dynamic, um, I discovered infrared. I developed a few devices. We started integrating them. My daughter responded amazingly well. And then all of a sudden, we were asked by these doctors because at that point, their practices were almost 100% infectious disease. Some of them were 100% Lyme. They asked for us to make these devices for them, which was kind of the genesis of our company. So we didn't have venture capital. We didn't have a business plan. We just had a personal situation, family situation that we needed to resolve. And it was very counter the way that medicine was being practiced at that time, and even in some ways today. And it was very lonely. I mean, we were just very focused. We were unwavering. We had a lot of negative Nancy's. If anybody's by the name of Nancy that might be present on the call, no derogatory statement there. But we had a lot of people that had an opportunity to take shots at us because it was very countercultural in terms of healthcare. And so with that, we managed to stay on course. We kept on developing more devices and collateral devices. And with that, again, I said earlier, the world is kind of sort of waking up to the power of healing of nature and doing what we can to bring it into people's homes and lifestyles.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I think about like being attached to one, the idea that a lot of like great heroes in healthcare are always inspired by trying to help others, especially close members of their families. Like my mom got into this industry because of me and my health problems as well as other health problems related. And you know, hearing that you got into it because of your daughter and figuring out a solution, it really does inspire and like underplay the idea that, this is a calling. And then now to hear how many people you've helped, and we help on a daily basis, we help hundreds of people. And it's crazy to think about like all the different, the butterfly, the trickle effect of really showing new positive technologies to people and getting, not to pat ourselves on the back, but really getting positive changes in the world is always a good thing. But it does start with the need and fulfilling that need. And in this case, the need was, as you were saying, like, I guess a missing component that should have been in her life naturally, which is sunlight, right? And you're drawing on the fact that there are wavelengths associated with the red light systems that you offer that are specifically in there that help mitigate the natural, uh, essentially the lack of or lack thereof of sunlight. Which I know, like a lot of times, like we can read articles that we say, oh, the best sunlight to get is like the first and last sun, like the 15 minutes or 10 minutes of like the sunset and sunrise. But it's so aggravating because most people don't sleep and wake up and sleep with the sun, right? They wake up either at like past the sunrise or they they don't get out of work until after the sun's down, right? And so it's hard to regulate yourself on that mitigation factor. But and this is going to start to showcase, I guess, each of the technologies. But like, for example, the Trilight, I do it while watching TV before bed, and it helps regulate the sleep significantly as a process for it, right? And that's like a red light system that you created. So one of the questions was I would have personally is what, you said there are different frequencies. Like what frequencies are in the actual device naturally, that the bandwidth of light's actually hitting? So I know that you call it a triplex, but it's three different wavelengths, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So is there, and are those specific frequencies? I think it's like 580. I don't remember off the top of my head the numbers. I don't know if you do remember them, but I know that those specifically selected because they help mitigate or not mitigate, mimic the sun's natural rays, or is there a different process that was thought of when you're picking that?
Okay. Again, great questions. The Trilight system, there's always a story. You're going to get a story from me, whether you like
Oh,
it or not.
perfect.
I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
telling
fine.
you right now, okay? So the my whole process here has been cathartic. I kind of gave you a sense of the genesis.
Hmm.
So if the wagon wheel hub is light therapy or sunlight, frequencies of sunlight, we can take a shallow dive to that or go deep. And part of what I did as a bioresearcher was I started to take apart each of the wavelengths, each of the frequencies of sunlight, and then identify and catalog what these frequencies do to our biology. Now, I taught health sciences at Hippocrates Health Center for 18 years. And um, I had the joy, if you know anything about Hippocrates, one of his things was, food is your medicine, right? And so I had this beautiful venue. I would teach to maybe 40 or 50 guests at a time every month. And I started staring at this picture of a mural of Hippocrates in the back of the room, and I was bothered by it because the food of Hippocrates' time, 150, 200 years ago, isn't the food of today, right? Like when you can go to a gas station and buy a Twinkie that has a shelf life of 500 years, you start to wonder, like, what is in that? And if you look at the ingredients, you don't get to a real food source until maybe the very last item on the list, right? Um, and the same thing for our environment. And so the Trilight was a very interesting addition for me because I took apart, I always ask the question as a device developer, why? Why is this type of technology done in this way? And so when I looked at the LED light emitting diode industry, why is it that they're all monochromatic? That means that a single light bulb or diode with a single attached or assigned frequency to it. Why is that? Is that science? Is that physics? Is that engineering? And I couldn't answer it. So I developed a diode, probably one of the first engineers in the country, bioengineers, to develop a diode that has three wavelengths in every diode. So that's called polychromatic. And so understanding that I could do that brought me into the next door that I opened up, which was, which diodes do I choose? Which ones are the most relevant to what I'm trying to achieve? That goes back to your earlier point about the intentions behind everything we do. And so the Trilight, I call it, which is basically a three light bulb or diode, has three different wavelengths. One is, and they're measured in nanometers. So one is the 663 nanometer, the
Hmm.
other is 840, and the other is 980. So one red light that is visible and to the eye, and two wavelengths that are invisible. God bless you, Kristen. So, so what I saw was an opportunity to deliver light therapy. That term, biophoton modulation, photon meaning light, and bio being the body, and wavelengths that are different wavelengths, or how they vary and what that effect on the body would be. It gave me an opportunity to develop a system,
Fire.
a actual diode that will deliver 3 times the amount of light energy into your cells that of other diodes that are currently on the market. To me, that was very relevant as a time in the time. And what it was a device that I added to my system, which is my full spectrum infrared sauna. And humbly said, we're number one in the world in that particular product, or device. But back to Hippocrates, I'm looking at this picture of him and I'm saying, what was the world like 200 years ago when he came out with when he developed Western medicine as we kind of see it today? And how is that relevant to today? Well, the food back then is different than the food today, and the environment, the epigenetic effects on our healthcare today is much different than it was 200 years ago. And so I went into a deep dive in my science on the sauna, and I said I took 2 years of data that's produced by NASA of all the light frequencies that hit the Earth on an annual basis. And then I did a mathematical first and second standard deviation, and that of those wavelengths. And I used that as the basis of my cocktail for developing full spectrum infrared sauna, that portable sauna. So it mimicked exactly what the sun delivers to the planet on a daily basis. Okay. Now that's good in a laboratory, but how does that play out in today's world? And in today's world, we have all those epigenetics. We have this environment that happens after after the light leaves the sun and starts to come through our atmosphere and then hit the planet. And so now we're talking about a different equation. And based on that, I thought, and based on the way that people were expressing themselves in clinic, which was very high oxidative stress, I saw that there were problems with mitochondria. The actual cell energy powerhouse was very deficient in most of the people that we're seeing in clinic. And I saw genetic expressions and proclivities that were happening to young people that shouldn't probably have never happened in their lifetimes, was happening to young people, like 14-year-old women that were showing signs of infertility and guys at 18 with low testosterone. That's not genetic. That's everything other. That's the imposition of choices in food and lifestyle and the environment on top of your genetics that are bringing these things out. So I needed to change the cocktail of the wavelengths that were natural, that came from in nature, that from the sun that hit the planet. And that's where the Trilight system came in, because the Trilight is the supplement of light energy that I believe is important to address today's world. Okay. So I brought in red light and I brought in more near infrared frequencies. That's why I chose those 3 wavelengths, because that will support your mitochondria. It will produce a transient gas. One of the 3 transient gases the body makes is called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide vasodilates, creating improved circulation, as well as triggers your blood to grab more oxygen. So if I could produce nitric oxide naturally by using light therapy, then I'm improving your blood oxygenation level, and I'm also improving your mitochondria, your cell support. So these are really primal systems the body has set up that I can do using light therapy to bring those out, using your body's natural abilities and systems to heal themselves. And so that was kind of the intention behind the Trilight system, for it to be a adjunct to the infrared sauna. Now, in the process of doing that, everybody went crazy over RLT, red light therapy. They just embraced it. And even today, to the point that we had so much interest in the Trilight as itself that we broke it out and we made it a standalone device.
Yeah. So, okay, that's that was quite a story, because
You
you've give
probably never heard all of that.
no,
I know.
and that's good, because now we have it forever captured. um,
Yeah.
is that's when you think about you know how old, like you know you it is interesting to think about the health arena 200 years ago, because we're in, as you'd say, a new frontier of technology and science. Um, Even as far as you'd say 80 years ago, like the actual LED diode wasn't invented until 1962. Like the mechanism for actually the delivery of these things is less than 100 years old. So then you start to think, okay, well, we we haven't really had the opportunity to test the medical effectiveness, and we're still using pharmaceuticals that were created in the 1850s, right? So, this caveat of thinking, okay, well, this is not hard science. It's like, no, it's a new era of science. It's a new era of development and deployment using these technologies. Because as a practitioner, you can take a pill, and it might be easier to take a pill or prescribe a pill. But and I know there are caveats to right tool, right nail, right job, right? Um, but the conscious idea that I always like to advocate for is that if you have a technology that works every time to do its exact thing that it needs to do, like the light switch, in this case, it's a red light switch, right? Then you should deploy and utilize that as much as possible, because it doesn't cost you anything besides electricity, which is relatively affordable, and the outcomes are quite significant across the board. So, in case anyone who's watching this is wondering what the actual technology we're talking about, so this is the first thing we're going to talk about, which is the Trilite device that I have here. I'm going to spotlight myself. I'm going to add pin. So this is the Trilite device. It's an easy device that's very foldable. So you can fold it. It has two metal lining marks in here, which then allows you to, if you have someone or a patient who has like a leg wound or an area that's surrounding it, you can fold it around it to kind of curtail it. And then when you go ahead and plug it in, it'll automatically turn on. Now we're going to actually experience a very cool demonstration here, um, because of how recorders and videos actually work. You might see a differential or a frequency subset that comes across here. Now I'm using the Avazia here, but you'll actually start to see waves cascading down the actual red light device. And this is to actually show you that we are putting a frequency, not only for the light itself, but a penetrating frequency to it. And so it interacts with the body differently. Now, why is that important? Well, just going out and having light on your body is not always the most effective variable or most effective way to get the therapy treatment, right? You can go to the beach, right, and you can get sunburned in 15 minutes, and it can be very, disruptive to your health. One of the thought processes behind why the first 15 and last 15 minutes of the day is beneficial is because it has the most variable frequency from the medium of the light blending through the sky, because there's actually more surface area of clouds and mitigation coming from the side rather than less when you have it directly above you, right? So that light is being altered essentially. Well, in the same processes, we have, even without plugging in your Avazia unit, you have this device that works on a very well basis to actually help get your body charged appropriately and improve and decrystallize a lot of the cellular membranes that are non-expressive, right? So one of the, you were talking about it kind of shortly, you're expressing that, cells kind of get, that you were talking about bioresonance and the way that cells get entrapped in certain mechanisms. Now, from my background, I understand that as gene expression, right? If a cell cannot correctly communicate properly with its internal or external environment mechanisms, it's going to develop mutations and coalesce into improper efficiencies or inefficiencies, and it's going to mitigate. Well, one of the things about red light is that it's very penetrating to the body, and because it helps reduce that membrane anti-expression process, the cellular structures in your body are going to be improved, right? You're going to also have improved vasodilation, so you're going to have better circulation. But that's really not, like, that's a side effect of the mitigating factor, that you're naturally producing different types of response agents. Like, the body is not in a vacuum, right? So one of the things I would say is, and this is always a curious question I have about this, is in your experience, how does the body change under red light therapy?
Oh gosh. I don't know if we're starting at the top of the pyramid or the bottom and working up, but I like to think that all change in the body happens on a cellular level. So we heal and we get sick on a cell level. If our cells are sick and there's enough of them that are sick, all of a sudden we have a symptom or a dysfunctional organ or system within the body. And so when I think and I develop our work, I actually think about the effect of what we're doing on a cell level, because I believe that's sort of the root of all health and disease in a sense, or ill health. So, so what kinds of things are we looking for with the use of sunlight, use of full spectrum infrared, use of red light, use of the effects of light energy, that subtle energy on the body? You can see things like um, improved circulation. So one thing that these are just made, I'm going to hit the broad strokes first. So improving circulation improves nutrition and also improves blood oxygenation. And so in your blood, you're carrying your DNA and RNA, which is all your genetic properties, as well as if you're eating organic foods or digested foods, it'll carry that, and or any supplementation, whether it be natural or pharmaceutical, is carried in your blood along with oxygen. And so if I can bring more of that around, if I can improve vasodilation, through vasodilation, I can improve circulation. I'm now talking about somewhere between 15 and 20% better circulation may improve the absorption or the potentiating of oxygen and or supplementation on a cell level, tissues then on a cell level, by anywhere between 25 and 35%. And so we've proven this in many ways. Vasodilation speaks for itself, so it's very easy to see an improved heart rate, and you can see under a microscope expanded vessels as soon as you bring infrared or any kind of light therapy, both visible and invisible light therapy, to a vessel. But we work with, I've been very fortunate because we got early into this area of healthcare, and I've surrounded myself with some of the greatest minds in healthcare. And one happens to be in Florida, in my hometown, Boca Raton. And he actually is an osteopathic practitioner who wrote the book for IV therapy for all the osteopathic schools, medical schools in the country. I think he's on his fourth edition now. And what we did was we brought our technology. We've been personal friends, family friends for more than 30 years. And his clinic is right here. And I brought my tech into his clinic. And we can actually see, because now we have an expert in IV therapy, and he's used to making cocktails of IV supplementation. And what we did was we brought in the infrared technology that we use, and we irradiate. We take all of the IV therapy bags with the saline solutions and his various different cocktails of supplements that are mixed or for that he uses in his IV. And because infrared, one of the attributes is that it restructures the water molecules, it actually makes all of that IV therapy much more bioavailable on a cell level. And so here's a doctor that built his entire career around IV therapy. And with a little bit of light therapy, our kinds of what we're talking about today, infrared and red light therapy, by adding that, just that one little thing, he's saying that his IV therapy is 30 to 40% more effective, meaning that he either uses less of it to get the same result, or he's using the same amount of IV intervention and getting a 25 to 30% faster, quicker result. The body is responding quicker. Why? Because these frequencies will restructure the water in the cocktail that allows your cell, it makes it more bioavailable on a cell level. So the tissues are, again, receiving the cocktail in a much more efficient manner.
So, not to interrupt you, so are you saying, so, if you have a concoction or a complex protein or enzyme that's in the actual bag itself, when you're bombarding it with electrons, so I'm jumping lingo to more more technical, but you're bombarding it because that's what the light frequency is doing, is you're essentially sending these photons or electrons through um, through the air. You're bombarding it, so you're electronegatively charging. Technically, you're creating an ionization process of that material. So you're saying that in the IV world, you can actually increase the efficacy of the process. Well, I mean, on a natural, on a organic chemistry level, that makes a lot of sense. Um,
Yes. And the other part is just a page out of Dr. Gerald Pollack's book called The Fourth Phase of Water, where he points out, which was a revelation for me because I was always searching every day, searching for the um, the micro reasons and technical reasons why our technology is so effective. I know why it is on a clinical expression, but what's the real deep science? And when I read Gerald Pollack's book, which was revolutionary, it probably still is on many levels, almost 10 years ago, he presented in front of the WHO in London. Um, he talked about structured water. And so, what's the function of water in the body? It's a transport system that brings nutrients to a cell and allows the cell, if it's a healthy cell or even an injured cell, to through the cell membrane for the cell to actually methylate and get its exports its toxins out of the cell. Okay, and so lacking light frequencies, lacking structured water in the body, then the cell is already impaired because it can't operate on an optimal level. And so I think that was truly the deeper science behind the IV therapy is really creating a structured water molecule to deliver the other nutrients that are in the cocktail to the body and to the cell and to the tissues.
hmm. Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure because um, it- the practitioner, Brenda, is like, make sure that they understand actually how to hook it up. So this is the pad itself that you'll see is the red light pad. Right now, I have a frequency running through it. There's two different variations that you can run with it. You can either just plug in so you have essentially right in the back here, you have a node that plugs in to power it. You can take this out right here, and the device is off. You can take this cord right here. So you can have a USB and you plug it into a USB outlet and plug it straight into the mat and it'll just go on flat without a frequency modulating. Now it has a natural mitigating frequency that it produces at. I don't know if is it something at like 60 hertz naturally or is it
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if it's 30, 60 or 90, but I think it's one mitigating. Yeah. And then, yeah, well, here's so technically you can just plug it into this USB charger. People are handing me things. All right. And then, then if you can plug that into the wall, there's a timer attachment that's included in the kit. So you can have a set timer. Or if you want to be fancy, you can plug it into your Avazia unit. So this is your Avazia unit. You can plug it with a lead wire that naturally goes from your Y bar or any of your other attachments. You take this lead wire, you plug it, and there's a tiny hole in the side of this little box, right? This is the modulating box. People always ask me, where do I plug it in? It's this tiny little hole. It's right there, right? And you plug the lead wire into that tiny hole. And so now you have this T. And then you take the power cord that plugs into the wall, and you plug it into the circle outlet right here. And then you take the USB if you didn't just plug it into the other USB, you plug it right there. And then now you have essentially power running through from one side into it, and then you have a modulation device that's modulating that current or the frequency in. Okay, I'll turn on the device. So I'll plug this back into the. When do you use this device and technology? I find that the best time to use it is before bed, but I also use it in a relaxed state. So at my center, what we do is after doing like a core whole body, or we do like a spinal release therapy or fascial release therapy, when the person's very relaxed, we put it on either their core or their face, and we put it either in a kind of like a slanted, so we'll bend it so that it wraps around, and then we just leave it on the table with them, and it's actually quite relaxing. Additionally, if they have it on, if they have a wound or open area sore area, we do clean them quite thoroughly between because of infection reasons, and we do have like plastic wrap that we put over the wound when we do that. So there's a caveat to the therapy option that you do, but we'll place it over that, and we've seen a phenomenal results. Just phenomenal results with that process, as well as for different types of neuropathy syndromes and different types of incidents where nitric oxide production is very key to the mitigation processes. We've also seen improvement. Um, so, and that depends on the type of neuropathy and type of situation that you have issues with, because you can have nerve-based neuropathy, you can have circulation. Okay, I'm getting another query that and so Robbie, and you've already answered like what you've seen in terms of like results with the technology as well as the underlying science of it. Do you have any tips and tricks about where you would deploy it and where you see the best results in deployment? Like, do you like besides for on the core or on the face, is there any other areas that you think people aren't utilizing the technology enough with?
Yeah, great question. And the product you're talking about is the Theraplex. So
Yep.
that's the Trilite, and the Plex is the combination of both the Avazia technology and the Trilite system.
Yep.
That's that, right, exactly. And we're really proud of that because I think that product or the device that you're holding and the combination is 2 to 5 years ahead of natural healing environment. So combining those two techs together is an interesting advancement, I believe, in our device genre or our catalog,
Hmm.
uh, because both of those devices have their own merits. But then when you put them together, the synergy there is really very powerful.
Yes.
My concept was to use the Trilite as a broadcasting system
Yep.
to basically bring the Avazia wavelengths and various different programming within the Avazia catalog, use that programming and broadcast that through the light therapy to bring them into the body, because I already know how important the light therapy is and how receptive the light therapy is to the body. I also know the same about the Avazia. So you can only imagine the amount of um, expedited ways that you can bring that your body will respond when you put those two together. Really fantastic. So one of the things that I don't know we've talked about extensively, Brendan, but um, we do work very closely with one of the top neurosurgeons in the country. He's out of Tyler, Texas, and he has a relationship with the NFL. And he's doing a study. We're collectively doing a study on TBI, traumatic brain injury. And so we use the Trilite. We place it behind the head here in the occiput, and it does amazingly well. The study is 30 minutes or less, no more than twice a day, and it will improve basically brain connection, or neuroplasticity is the more formal use. And
Mm-hmm.
so for people with that coming out of comas, for anything actually neurological, MS, PD, many of the ones that the chronic challenges that most modern medicine is choosing not to, let's say, address through natural remedies. We're seeing an incredible amount of results from resparking the synapses or the connections in the nerve endings between nerve to nerve. And so we found it, here we're talking about the chronic challenge, but on the other side, if you're just trying to dial up your optimal health, extend your length of life, you want to slow down the erosion of telomeres, which is stuff that you can actually see under a microscope. We can show, and I always use the word prove it, so we can actually demonstrate through science that in fact this therapy is this kind of approach is very, very effective. And so TBI or neurological stuff, anything that involves circulation and the things that how circulation impacts. We talked about vasodilation, or just improving your metabolic function that way. It's very effective. It also will work with the lymphatic system. In lymph has a tendency; it's a little bit more viscous than blood is
Yep.
as an actual. So for people that are sluggish in their own lifestyles, or many people with chronic ailments, they're just so sick they can't get out of bed, so their lymphatic systems are compromised. A way to keep um, the lymphatic system driving, if you're not using some kind of compression wear, or some of the newer technology that actually, like you've seen it in hospitals, where it'll expand and contract, emulating what the body would do or the muscle group would do to move lymph along. You can use the Trilite system on areas like lymphedema to evacuate edema in the body and swelling. You can use it on both chronic and acute injuries, pain, lowering pain thresholds. It's remarkable. Um, we are cleared by FDA as class 2 medical on that device and many others that we make. And so the FDA allows us to speak to improving circulation, lowering pain thresholds, and improving rest and relaxation. So now we're talking about the autonomic nervous system moving, helping the body self-regulate, moving from sympathetic dominance, which is that fight and flight, which most of us are experiencing in today's world, to a more calm state where when we can move into that parasympathetic position and you intervene with almost any other modality, your body is going to be more akin to receive it. And so to use that small little pad and the Theraplex approach to just create a primal healing event for the body to receive any other intervention, for that alone, it has amazing attributes and
Okay.
benefits.
Yeah, no, that's well. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack, and I've got people. I've got I think we're behind by 8 or 9 questions here, so I'm gonna try and sprint through these questions as well. So that's really informative. I never thought about the lymph as a not just necessary thing, but whenever you do have circulation restriction, you get lymphatic issues especially. And then also when you're talking about the upper motor neuron redevelopment in terms of concussion, because a lot of that is right in the upper motor neuron processes. That can be essentially you can have broken axioms that aren't firing or mechanized properly. You can have whole spectrums of nerve endings that aren't appropriately being essentially resource driven to or resource taken from. So it creates these huge inefficiencies across the body. And I never really thought about that as a stroke therapy option, but we have been using it in the center for it. We've been doing it right behind the cervical. We have been seeing somewhat of a positive results for that. Um,
Yeah.
so in
Wait,
that,
reducing, I should say, I mean, I mentioned detoxification earlier and the method there, but that's a big one, particularly in today's world, because toxicity and inflammation, they both kind of hang out together. And so and that was really where I was going with my daughter, because I saw she had high levels of toxicity, because Lyme disease, in its natural progression, just the parasite and the co-infections, bacterias that live with Lyme, what you have is you have a challenge, because the Lyme itself, has a life cycle. It dies. That's a toxin. During its life cycle, it's pooping, right? So that's a toxin. And so mostly people are symptomatic because they're toxic. And so I thought for my daughter particularly, and most people listening today, if I could show you an efficient way to lower toxicity, then I'm lowering inflammation. And if I'm lowering inflammation, then I'm lowering symptoms, or some symptoms, the obvious ones, start to abate. Now, it may not be focusing on the root cause of the challenge, but it gives that person, the chronically suffering patient or person, a lot of their life back. And
yeah.
it certainly buys a lot of time for their practitioners to find the root cause and actually get at it. So to me, that's a major reversal in the way, the perspective of many of the health providers look at the world these days. And so I would love to really, again, bring that back to the discussion, because of that relationship between symptoms and toxification of the
Well,
body's toxic.
that's a perfect segue into the next, I think, device or technology. But because the sauna acts as one of those expressant stressors that will help drive the body to dehydrate itself, and then also while it's dehydrating itself to try and piggyback on different things out of those highways out of the body. which then can help. And if you're doing the red light while you're doing that, well, you're also opening up essentially huge bounds of cellular interactions.
Correct.
And yes, it will go right to the clothing. Okay, so I'll go through the questions right now because I think Brenda's trying. She's been trying to chip in this whole time. She's like, I want this question answered. Okay, so Don was asking for the light pad work with degenerated disc and other areas across the spinal processes. Can you expect any physical improvement from utilizing the pad on those areas?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
So how? Well, first off, if you have um, when you have like an arthritic condition or you have a degenerative disc, that's a little bit different. There's a lot of mitigating challenges. First off, if your disc isn't functioning properly in an area of your spine, then the disc or your spinal column basically has a few main functions. One is to protect the spinal cord. And then the discs in between, they actually act like shock absorbers. So when we're walking along, that your spine is kind of going like this, like a kind of like a slinky. I'm
Mhm.
at properly, um, aging or posting my age a little bit about that. But as the shock absorber is catching the shock, that's protecting the spine, and it's also giving us mobility in ways, right? And the other function that people don't necessarily function on is or speak about is that the actual disc acts almost like a sponge and holds spinal fluid that will actually help the spine and the sac around the spine to actually give the spinal cord all the nutrients that it needs in order for those cells to thrive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's in fact the story I'd love to. We actually had an interaction with this exact thing where, just like how you had that sync interaction for functionality, we had a fascial release. So we had a patient who, um, their spine was entrapped and they had stricture across, so they had range of motion problems and their processes was inhibited, right? So they couldn't churn, right, without feeling tremendous amounts of pain, almost as if it was a slip disc, but it wasn't a slip disc. It was just infrared. We released the fascia, but the body was still going into this mitigated shock process. And Robbie, you're there. When we put the red light on it, it kept it out of that shock process. And we were trying to figure out, well, how is this possible? Technically it's just light, but the nervous system was going into a non-functional state, right? And then the red light was actually keeping it into a subtle, essentially passive state of health, right? So it was constantly allowing it without going so far as to essentially go into a response state of shock, which is a nice feature of it. So, what's as far as realistic protocols go? A lot of people are asking, is there a time limit for how long you can use the red light on someone, and what would be a minimum viable treatment plan?
Okay, it takes 8 minutes for the average adult sized person to get enough light energy into their body in order for them to create a physiological event, for some change to happen inside. Now, there are some variables. So, what we are using is specialized light frequencies, and we're powering them with enough power and voltage, joules, in order for us to drive that light through your skin and actually through that layer of fat under your skin into your body or into your cells. And so if and our devices are designed because they have virtually no electromagnetic fields related to them, you can put them right on your body. So I'm bringing a light source right to the area where you have pain or you have challenge on any level. And by doing that, you're actually bringing the sun, in a sense, because we're taking an extraction of sunlight right to the cells, the tissues, or the area of the body, muscles, or organs that need that special care. We're also doing something else. We're tricking your brain because think of your brain, has a certain amount of soldiers, like an army.
Mm.
And every day, every second of the day, the brain is analyzing how to deploy those soldiers to keep your body functioning kind of smoothly. that's what we call homeostasis, which is just an even keel. So we have a lot of variables, the environment, the choices we make, the epigenetic expressions, all that. And then we have a certain amount of internal energy and soldiers to deploy. Now, when you take our light therapy and you bring it to an area, you're actually taking the brain and saying, we need more love over in the shoulder, because of the light therapy is now actually creating an event to sort of deploy more healing powers besides what the pad does itself, but it's going to recruit more of the body's healing powers to that area that you're bringing the light to, because we're bringing more attention to that particular area. So that is often misunderstood in how subtle energies can help the body. And that's why I love the on body, and also in the sauna, the full body experience. Now, if you look at some of the other competitors in the industry, they will tell you, like some of the ones that, like, you see these metal cans with LED lights in them. They have these cocktails of different frequencies in it. Basically, it's pretty much all the same stuff. We've created that cocktail in one diode. They're doing it by setting up arrays of different frequencies and then bringing them to you. But they'll all, if you look at the fine print in their user guides, they'll say, stay 8 inches away, stay 12 inches away, stay 18 inches away. The further you get away from that light source, the less effect that light will have in penetrating into your body on a cellular level. Remember, we're back to cell health. And so we have a very high competitive advantage because we're doing an on-body experience with our devices.
Mm-hmm. And
and
would you
and
want it on the skin, or is it okay if you have it with one layer of clothes? I know it loses efficacy when you have a layer of clothes over it.
No, not really.
Oh, it
Actually,
doesn't.
there's
Okay.
our wavelengths, infrared, invisible wavelengths, and so forth, they will penetrate through clothing, but they are filtered by silicone or um, synthetic materials like latex. So if you're wearing like those stretchy gym outfits, it will filter. You'll get all the frequencies over time, but you won't get as much as if you were wearing cotton. If you had it right on your body, that would be optimal. But if you had a t-shirt on, those frequencies will go through the t-shirt and come into the body.
Okay.
So that is there too much? I mentioned 30 minutes. That's mostly for any kind of therapy that's neurological, neck up. But from neck down, you can have it on your body. And after the first, let's say, week or so of doing an hour or so of treatment a day, you then can use it unbridled. But it is important for us to know that these wavelengths will create a detoxifying effect, whether it's just on one spot of you or in the sauna where you're basically bathing in these frequencies. So you do need, it's essential to hydrate along before and after using light therapy, because you're mobilizing toxins. And so what I love to do is combine using a binder of some kind. Usually it's an activated charcoal or a bentonite clay. So as we're mobilizing toxins, we got a binder now that's going to gobble them up and help your body to efficiently evacuate them.
Okay, that's very interesting. That gets right along the lines of this next question, kind of, in a subtle way, is that so the next question someone had was they rely on caffeine to get up in the morning, and so they need this natural. They create a natural process or stressor in their body. Um, can the red light device help with their energy production while still maintaining that detoxification process, where you're mitigating that stressor or that adjutant, but you're also still providing the energy needed for you to function?
Okay. Um, I um, I have sympathy for people that like caffeine, because I do as well.
Mm.
And I was from the school that if I made a pot of coffee, I drank a pot of
Yep.
coffee. So right now, I just make my 1 cup a day or 4 ounces, and I have a device that I just make my own fresh coffee, 1 cup, and that's my dose, and it works well for me. Because I supplement with other things, and red light or infrared is one of them, because the near infrared frequencies, the ones I mentioned and the ones that are in the trilight, will actually energize. It is part of that electron transport system that you alluded to earlier, but it does bring more energy to the mitochondria, which is, everybody wants to know. Everybody knows that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. But how does the mitochondria get energized? Where do they get it from? And it comes from the planet, it comes from the earth, and it comes from the sun.
Mm.
And so we can get it directly by being in sunlight. We can get it indirectly by being around the plant kingdom that's absorbing sunlight, and then we get it sort of indirectly from the plant kingdom. If you guys have little fur babies, little animals out there, they go out, they play in the yard, they're collecting nature, and then they come in and they jump into your arms and they're licking the hell out of your face. I don't know where our friend went, but she had a beautiful dog earlier, Carmen, that was on. And we're enjoying their company, but what are they sharing with us? They're sharing with us the microorganisms and the microbiome that they just came from outside, or macrobiome, and their bodies are absorbing this frequencies from sun, and their bodies are letting that go, and by just hugging you or you hugging them, they're transmitting that energy into your body, and then the cells soak it up like a sponge and essentially support mitochondria health that way.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So, and that's a great, it's one of those things where sometimes, nature, I always say it's like animal intelligence is like animals have a smarter way of looking at health sometimes, and also a sillier way if you don't ignore the smart ways, right? It's like being outside, grounding, getting sun. They'll temperature regulate, they'll seek different things. It's actually healthier.
Yeah,
My my one process I always think about with the red light is like, if you're talking about energy, and one of the main things to make sure you have proper energy is like the eat, sleep, diet, exercise. And if you follow all of those things, you should have proper energy. Well, you need to hydrate, you need to go out in the sun, you need to, if you don't go out in the sun, well, you can supplement that with the red light therapy option as well. If your body has, I always like to say, if your body finally gets energy and there's gunk in the room, like if you have a dirty room and you finally have a lot of energy that day, the first thing you do is you start to clean your room, right? And it's one of those things, or you start to clean up your to-do list, but you backtrack on it. So one of the thought processes, if you have too much energy, you go into this manic cleaning state, and that's like that essentially that healing crisis that you're talking about. And so less is more if you're trying to have a positive, slow process of integration into the life. I think is always like the clear like recommendation. I get so many people in our center that just come in and they're like, I want to spend 8 hours with you. I have a 1 week to change my life, and I want you to change it. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's not an intervention. In fact, we started renaming some of the, because I was like, it's a health intervention at one point, and I was like, okay, no, we can't do intervention anymore, because it's we need to start changing passively, and the processes that are slow integrations interactions. But so it's funny because we said it was going to be like an hour and a half, an hour, and we haven't even gotten to the other technology yet to
I
go.
know.
So it might be the best. So it might be best if we show each of the technologies and we kind of
Sure.
do a shotgun for a second, because we talked
Okay.
about the theoretical background behind the red light. Well,
Yeah.
in the same processes of the sun, you have the sauna here, which can you turn it on by any chance? Yeah. So the sauna, let me move my head. The sauna is the same thought process behind the red light, only if you do thermoregulation or thermo temperature. I think what's the right word for it? You have a better word for it than I do. It's um, contrasting,
Well, the contrast therapy really that we
contrast
talked
therapy. There
about.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is they take essentially the pad here, and you place it inside the actual sauna itself, and then you enclose yourself. Do you want to get in it? Yeah, I'll show a live person. And so you do this, and you can actually get it. I think it goes up to what, 189, 179,
170. 170.
170. Yeah. So, and it gets quite hot in there. Oh yeah, yeah. You can see that the panels are in there, and so you enclose yourself like a cocoon in there, and then what ends up happening is um, you get the benefit of heat therapy where your body is sweating, it's detoxing, it's going through the processes, but you're also bathing in this frequency of this red light, right? Oh, zip you up. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and
So
it's so you can see that she's cocooning in there. And this is one of the technologies that is really also amazing, and we could talk a long time about. I'm going to shotgun this really quickly to say that uh, beneficial almost every day. I would say every day to do this. If you're a clinician or using it for personal life, having it in your home or in your practice is a very smart idea because you'll get you'll get patients who have, um, I would say, uh, different complex syndromes that seem almost unbelievably foreign in how you would symptomatically treat or go about your therapy options. And a lot of times, they'll feel significantly better if they just go in the sauna, drink a little bit of water, start to go through the natural processes of restoring their body's natural charge. And what I always recommend is you clear the spot with the avasia, and you make sure that their autonomic and parasympathetic nervous systems are regulated and optimized for actual functionality. The fascia is all clear and smooth, so that means their body's muscular skeletal systems interacting and their lymph can flow as well. And then you go in here and you make sure that they don't have um, essentially these complex processes of either heavy metal poisoning or different toxins that could be integrated into their body, because we didn't even get into the fact that the light. Yeah. She says, let Robbie explain it. Yeah, yeah. But besides the sauna, which I want to make sure that we get everything in here, we also have the other thing you talked about with how EMFs on the body is very bad as well. So there's this EMF protection pyramid that's I call it I don't what's the name for this? I call it the protection pyramid because it's so cool looking. But let me see if I can drag the computer over here. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is the protection period, and it's pyramid. It's quite heavy. But what it ends up doing, and Robbie, what does this do? You explain this first, and then I'll take a shotgun at it.
okay. So the challenge with electromagnetic fields, and we started to remediate close to 17 years ago before I kind of fashioned it like Kabbalah wasn't important until Madonna made it important. So now when I look at electromagnetic fields, like 17 years ago, my notion was if we're developing technology like the sauna and the Trilight and other devices we make, and they're powered by alternating current, I'm going to be harnessing nature at the same time. I'm going to be bringing these non-natural man-made wavelengths into the same environment. And so how would the body reconcile that? Remember my thinking now. I'm thinking on a cell level. The brain's designed to preserve and protect. And so is the body going to defend itself against these exogenous man-made frequencies, EMF, RLF, I'm sorry, RF signals, which are radio frequencies, or ELF, which is extreme low frequencies, that's dirty electricity? And how are we going to mitigate that? And so, frankly, 17 years ago, I didn't know. I also didn't know that the cell phone business was going to explode. Yeah.
I quickly, because you went through three terms that an electrical engineer or someone in the industry would immediately go, I understand what that is. So, like RF is like your Wi-Fi, if you think about it that way. So Wi-Fi is a natural irritant to the body, passively, on an engineer's perspective, right? It does interact with the body in some way, shape, or form. There's a weak amount of force, technically the engineering society, like the engineering groups that invented it and decided to broadcast it everywhere, and they said, well, it's relatively minute amounts of electromagnetic interaction that occurs in the body, but there is enough of it that the body changes and mitigates its action and defends itself. That's what he's talking about when he's talking about high frequency radio frequency smog or action background action. When he's talking about stagnant or low frequency, whenever you have a current or electricity or a standing cord, let's just say a cord, right? Whenever you have an electrical flow, there's always Maxwell's equations at play here. There's always um, an area around it that's stagnant or say standing, a standing magnetic waveform. That's the low frequency, right? It's essentially near one, right? Or near whatever amplitude it is, that's the variant frequency that's at. So that's the e-smog that he's talking about. Which is why you shouldn't have your phone on your body at all times, because that's a standing current or circuit under fire, because it's always attached to the battery, it's always on. So it's producing these electromagnetic forces. Now, Robbie, how does, and I want you to continue with your line of thought. I just want to make sure that people understand that like every cord in their house is a natural irritant. Every standing electro capacitor or capacity underflow is naturally producing these magnetic force waves that are influencing the body. And this is going to make people so like, and the worst thing, I call it the e-stress issue, where it's like, sometimes if you stress about it, it's worse than the actual smog effect that it can provide. But it should, if you can, you should reduce your wiring in your room around where you sleep, where you spend a lot of your time in stagnation. But if you can't, how does this actually help with that process? Let me let you finish.
So I guess back to my
Yes.
my intention.
Yeah.
So back then I didn't have any clue. I wasn't really thinking forward that the world would blow up with cell phones and that we would have electric cars and electric everything. And we were then probably operating at 1 to 3G networks, gigahertz networks. I never envisioned us going to 5 as we are now. And the same micro towers that are carrying 5G networks are also carrying 7G and 10G networks that the military and the government are using. So because we don't see them, we don't smell them, we don't taste them, doesn't mean that they don't exist. Again, we're talking about subtle energies. Just like sunlight, you have subtle destructive energies or impactful energies on the body, and those are generally the ones that are man-made. If you look at this under an oscilloscope, you'll see that an EMF, an electromagnetic field, will oscillate approximately 80 times stronger or higher than the body's natural field. And so when we're immersing our natural field in a higher energy field, it takes our natural energy field, it draws our natural energy field up towards the higher field. And in doing so, it changes the relationship in our electrical system, which is the basis of our whole neurological system, is based on low voltage. The entire Avazia type of technology is all about stabilizing that relationship between the electron transport system within the body. And then we've got these forces of man-made that are out here. And guess what? The two agencies that control the level of frequencies that are put into our products, cell phone, wireless phones, like the 24 gigahertz phones and so forth, is the FTC, the Trade Commission, and the FCC, which is the Communication Division. And guess how many health-minded people sit on those panels that actually, yeah, there you go, Doc. I usually say, close your eyes, what do you see? So there's virtually no control. And if you looked at, when in my slide presentations, I have a bar chart showing US and Canada here, Australia there, and the rest of the world. I'm talking about Europe, Asia, down here in terms of the standards of what their wireless devices, the frequencies that they're allowed to regulate or put out. So does that mean that Americans and Australians and Canadians are super powerful people, superhuman, so we can manage on a cell level to live through the bombardment of these kinds of wavelengths? Or is it just about money? All right, so I'll leave you guys to, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm just reporting into you that, to me, I felt it important to come up with technology that would actually remediate that. And years ago, 17 years ago, I actually produced the most advanced forms of remediation, which was basically shielding and blocking. So we shielded our devices, we blocked the frequencies, but that wasn't good enough for me. This is Robbie, the bio researcher, because it's what I call reactive, meaning they come out with 3G, I modify equipment and shield for 3G. By the time it gets into your home, they're now putting out 5G. And it'll keep going like that because the money is behind the technology and people buy into the tech because they want to surf faster, they want to game faster, they want to watch videos and download and transfer information faster, they want to drive e-cars. I mean, that train has left the station. And so now looking at it in a more modern, we're doing something that I believe no one else is doing, or not that many other people are doing, and we're using energy, subtle energies, to harmonize the body. And so we actually will remediate in three different ways. We shield and we block, and we also harmonize. Harmonizing is what that pyramid is all about. And what that's doing is it's kind of working on the same level, a couple of things. It works on a principle like Bose noise canceling, or when you hear about how that works, you got a positive signal and you have a negative sound wavelength. And if it's at the same frequency, they cancel each other out. That allows pure music to stream through and basically takes the noise out. So that's part of what's in that. We're generating a wavelength that's canceling the wavelengths and mitigating in that regard. It also supports your own biofield. So it's now giving you energies that are natural within our own body fields. So now I'm creating a stronger shield that we have naturally around our bodies. Now, most people don't know, but when we're born, our biofields, in the 60s, it was called an aura. In the 21st or 20th century, whatever one we're in now, it's now called a biofield. And so as a child, your biofield can extend 700 feet. As an adult, I'm talking about when you get to the age of 18, 19, 20, we're lucky if our field extends as far as our hand, which is 3 feet. So what has caused that biofield to collapse? Now, the study was actually interesting because it was done in Bali. And what's very interesting about Bali, or the remote rural areas of the world that have less cell towers, they're noticing that the biofields stay extended for a much longer time into adulthoods. The other thing I want to point out, this more has to do with infectious disease, about how the frequencies affect us. Dietrich Klinghardt, which is a cancer Lyme doctor, a very famous doctor in the Pacific Northwest, he did a study in that area where he sampled 100 patients from rural and 100 patients from the cities, from the urban areas. They're drinking the same water, they're breathing the same air, and eating approximately the same kinds of foods from the same area. The only difference, major difference, is the concentration of cell towers in those two areas. And they measured the blood, the toxicity of the blood, and the mycotoxins and the amount of toxins from bacteria in the body were somewhere between 75 and 95 times stronger or more prevalent in the blood samples from the patients that are in the inner cities, the urban areas. And the contribution of that is simply by the microtowers that are energizing these bacteria that are in the body, and the parasites and the mold, and they're replicating faster, and they're creating higher toxic effects in the body, all generated by these wavelengths. So bad for us, good for the bugs. And so what we did was we reversed that idea. And then something that most people don't focus on, but this is what I do. I notice what I notice. It's one of my sayings. And so I noticed when I was doing certain kinds of what is it? It's called Kirlian photography, which captures auras. I noticed that because I started preaching about the harmful effects of EMF to the healthcare community, better part of 15 years ago, they all kind of laughed at me, threw tomatoes at me when I was on stage, metaphorically. But basically, I said, how do I prove to this community that, in fact, it exists when most people were completely ignoring it? And what I did was that I actually took aura photography and I showed what an EMF looks like for the first time. And what I noticed was that the spin and the of the energy was in a counterclockwise fashion. And for those people that study the traditional Chinese medicine and many other of the energy healers of the world, again, back to ancient cultures and so forth, what energizes the body is when you create a positive spin or a clockwise spin on the energetics to balance and meet your body's energies. When we are immersed in a counterclockwise, it's basically drawing our life force, drawing our energy from us. And so part of what that pyramid does is it reverses the spin of electromagnetic fields or e-smog, creating a positive force rather than a negative force, as well as mitigating the challenges with these subtle energies or the harmful ones. And that pyramid will send a signal 5,000 feet. But what's very interesting about it is it's multi-directional because EMF is a single, is a planar energy. Okay. And so we make a device that will remediate. It's a lot less money, and you just plug it right into your socket, and it will fix the dirty electricity from that socket if it's not grounded properly. And it will also generate a signal 2,500 feet, but only works on one floor. What's unique about the pyramid is it actually goes in all directions, 5,000 feet.
Yes, and okay. So there's a lot to unpack there because it's all good stuff. Because you know, I think first thing you know that I'm drawn to is when you talk about toxicity and things that are found in the body. We know that electromagnetic frequencies interact with different metabolic processes across the body. We know that they vasodilate, they cause acute processes that our body's not naturally going to allow to occur, right? So different toxins will break through different barriers and get into the bloodstream that they're not naturally supposed to be in because there's more electronegatively charged areas. There's more active ability for things to bypass different regions. Things open up when they shouldn't. It messes with the normal processes in the homeostasis, right? So we know that there's definitely a problem with electromagnetic interaction and radiation, right? You know this if you get hit by lightning, for example, you know that your body's going to get shut down all across the board, right? So we know that just pure electricity is not beneficial. And then as far as the radiation or the magnetic influx or inflow of that electrical energy is also not beneficial as well because it plays. Where does it become beneficial? Now, as a technological advocate, when we advocate for PEMF or Dr. Ryan, the Don, but when we advocate for PEMF, it's pulse electronic magnetic field. It's always it's a stressor. It's always in small amounts in certain situations that provide the body the natural ability to, like using the key lock principle, natural ability to ramp up and then clean up, right? And then that always is never inundating or too much, which is the beneficial or positive side of that. One of the things I noticed right away when I was using this pyramid, in my own experience, was that now I slept very well when I had it in my room, but my partner had nightmares for the first week, and we could not figure out why. It was only when we put the pyramid in too. So we first night she had a nightmare. We took the pyramid out. We unplugged it. She didn't have a nightmare. Okay, let's try it again. So and back and forth, nightmare, not nightmare, nightmare, not nightmare. I was after the fifth night, I said, okay, this something, it's doing something. You got to embrace it. And she actually had an emotional cathartic experience because of the way that it was interacting with the room, and that we were theorizing that there's some type of closure point that her body was not adjusting to properly, and that she was using her body was trying to mitigate for some other standing thing, and then when she felt comfortable or in a safe environment, it started to, just like when you have energy you clean up your room. Well, when you have the mental capacity to go and address things, you start to address things, especially emotional, which is one of the higher level energetic mechanisms, right? When we talk about emotions, like like if you think about the brain as this, or the body, the soul as this complex convolutional neural network, this cascading array of this waterfall of current and electricity back and forth between the neurons, right? It's extremely impacted by the magnetic interactions and regions of the brain. So when your brain is constantly singing its own, I call it singing its character, but when it's singing its character, constantly trying to reaffirm it with all this outside interaction, you can never work on that character. Well, when you free up the room so that there's less interactions or less irritants to that character singing process, or you call it the cascading waterfall of neuroactivity, it's easier to actually do maintenance on that character and the
Yeah.
principles underlying it. So that's my technical aspect of why I think the pyramid's wonderful. Robbie, what do you think about that example or that statement that I was making?
Yeah, I like it. I think that she had um, maybe some unresolved emotions that the subtle energies of the pyramid actually were bringing them forward.
Mm,
And and I think that, just think about the reverse. When you're immersed in electromagnetic fields and your neurological system adjusts to this new
yes.
environment because we're very adaptive like that. And now you bring in a technology that wipes that chalkboard clear. Your body needs to readjust or realign back to its natural state. And I think that's what she was experiencing. And it's pretty remarkable, actually, the way you guys kind of self-regulated. But I believe that's all that was happening for her, was that she was just realigning and her nervous system was self-regulating,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah. The now this is one of you talked about the other item that you can plug in. I don't have that here with me. Or do I?
Yeah.
Do we have one here? The wall plug version of
Yeah,
that?
I can show you. I can show you.
Oh, might
It's back
he
here.
has it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Out of all the technologies we have here, again thank you everyone for staying with us for this long. I don't. This is supposed to be an hour and a half, so we're going a little extra, but
Yeah.
we can,
Okay.
if we want to, I think it might actually be beneficial if, oh, that's how it looks like. Yeah, it looks great. Yeah, yeah, that's, yeah. If we want to, it's 2,500 square feet. Yeah. Yeah. So if we want to maybe do a round two collaboration, um, maybe next week sometime, I think that
Yeah.
actually might be beneficial because I'm getting
Yeah.
I'm getting getting flaws and I'm getting questions sent to me.
No, no
Um,
worry.
and I think that we might want to break that down. But before, so I'll say let's cut it off in 15 minutes. Um, but before we cut it off, I think that there's one more thing that I want, because we talked about the EMF protection pyramid.
Sure.
You're wearing the pendant, so I want to talk about the Theravibe, the cards, and
Okay.
um, so um, you were talking about how Bose has noise canceling and essentially field canceling mechanisms. It's not the case that we want to live in a dead field. So we don't want complete silence in the electromagnetic spectrum. So
Correct.
how do these cards, as well as the pendant, work towards formatting the electromagnetic signal into a positive beneficial therapy?
Okay. There's a little bit of quantum science and understanding that's connected to that. But just like I mentioned earlier, we spent the better part of 2.5 to 3 years cataloging light frequencies. We did the same with the frequencies, other frequencies, subtle frequencies, um, and again, it kind of like was a page out of Nikola Tesla and also Einstein when they were working together, identifying natural resources, studying that science, and then there's a whole body of work that's around harnessing these frequencies that are being used in various different technologies. What we did was we cataloged all the frequencies that everything in nature is associated with. And then we took a look at them and saw which frequencies actually work synergistically or together, that we saw real change in nature, both in the plant and animal kingdom. And then what we did was we said we needed a way to be able to capture those frequencies and then, in a sense, record them. And so just open up your minds a little bit to imagine what we do now. We take pictures and we take a visual expression of energy, and we put it into a camera. And it used to go like Kodak made those ones that you could, pop out of a little machine and fan that. I don't know, again, I'm dating myself, but now you don't have to wave it back and forth and it'll actually appear. Or it's all digitalized right now. And then we have audio tracks that we can record from a tape recorder onto a digital format or a tape. And so understanding that you can identify both light frequencies, that would be the visual spectrum, and also sound frequencies. Why not expand that same concept into capturing all frequencies in nature? Okay. So we spent a bunch of time understanding and cataloging. Then the second part was, how do we record it? And so the technology that, more formally is basically called imprinting. And so we have a device that we developed that we take the energy source, that could just be a plant or a flower, depending on what we want to record. It goes into like a well, and then we can transport that energy from that life source onto something, onto a medium that will actually hold it. So then the second part of the technology is inventing a technology that will hold that frequency, which is similar to a tape from a tape recorder, or like the thumb drives that we now record our digital information from, both pictures and from computers and so forth. And the two formats we took were a foil type hologram, and what you're holding, which is a carbon fiber card that's 7 layers thick, including sacred geometry. There's natural, what you see if you move it back and forth is, you'll notice there's actually 18 karat gold that's in this format. And it comes in two ways. You can deliver it in a credit card or in a pendant that you wear. Now I've got 220 frequencies that I have recorded onto this medium that are the natural frequencies of the earth and the sun. It includes many harmonic frequencies like 432, 528 that we've experienced in nature, sound frequencies, and many of the essential oils that we extract from both plants and from flowers. We take those energies and we now imprint them into this card. And so when I have this card on my body, it's basically bringing all of those healing energies that, because everything in nature, I believe, has a frequency associated with it or to it. And so now we've recorded those onto these mediums. And when we hold those energies to your body, it's just like walking through a rainforest. It's just like walking through a rose garden. It's just like taking your shoes off and walking in sand, or hugging a palm tree, or anything that's rooted into the earth, bringing that charge into your body. But again, I'm just doing what I said earlier. I'm harnessing nature and putting it into a medium that allows us to bring nature into our busy lives and into our homes and into our lifestyles. So when I have this card on my body, or I'm wearing this pendant, I'm basically walking around with nature. I'm building my own natural garden of energies around me that's protecting me from e-smog, electromagnetic fields. It's also supporting my neurological system and many systems of the body that we need those natural energies for us to have the optimal cellular activity and methylation. And so that's the principle behind it. It's two different formats. One is in the cards and the pendant, and the other is the foils. And the foils are something like this. I wear one now here. It's just a hologram. And on that hologram, this one has 9 frequencies, and I'm wearing it for recovery. And so it helps me when I'm speaking a lot. So it holds my vocal, keeps the integrity of my voice in place. And it also helps with breathing. And so we have these for recovery, for performance, for immune systems. So they're all different wavelengths. They're imprinted on these little patches. You put them on the areas of your body where you need healing and love. There's not a lot of, it's all intuition. If you hurt your shoulder, you put a pain patch there. If you're recovering from a workout or a competition, you know what muscles you've overworked, just put a recovery patch right on that area. And it's going to bring, again, recruit your brain to bring body energies, and again, recruit nature as it intended us to be, to heal ourselves in a much more expedited and efficient manner.
Mm. Yeah, the okay. So again, thank you for that explanation and that description of the cards. And 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 I on a personal note, I mean, I carry this around everywhere I go. I have it on my keys. I have it on my wallet. And like I was talking about with the radio frequency waves, for example, your credit cards and your debit cards are now RF chips. They are resonant
Yes.
chips that produce if I can, as a computer programmer, if I can get a frequency output from something, I'm getting a recording or I'm getting data from
Yeah.
XYZ. Well, it's also projecting that data out, right?
Yeah.
And so having having your body constantly exposed to those mechanisms is never a positive thing. So I keep it in my wallet. I keep it wherever I go, and I feel better for it. I do feel better for it. Now, I am not. I'm always. I call it a lifelong skeptic of almost every tech that claims, because that makes the claim of just absorbing a nature. I mean, we know it's like, if I have to explain, how a CD works, right? By the pitting mechanisms that you have, like whenever you go shine a light on a CD, you get data back in frequency burst, right? We can store information on a CD, right? So the idea that you can store it through a card also works. But by the same mechanism, what I've witnessed and I've tested before is, if I take a trimeter, and a trimeter is a EMF, PEMF, electro detection system, and I put this in front of a standing current, the current is zero. It impedes the magnetic flow or flux from that device. Now, theoretically, it's not impeding it. And this is one of those things I've worked out with a couple electrical engineers, because they're skeptical about this concept. Because the only thing that really impedes electrical or magnetic interactions is like a Faraday cage, for example. Um, Partially or incomplete. I mean, there's also some types of mechanism for induction for Tesla's coil mechanisms, which can interplay with that. But um, so the concept that we came up with is projected response. Is that it's formatting the existing current, the existing mechanisms in the air, and it's producing a different resonance with it. And that resonance, if you follow under the Fibonacci processes, or if you follow under different electro interaction processes, is more beneficial, significantly more beneficial than the standing low field waves, right? And it's one of the, you know, I think it's a very low tech solution for such a problem that interplays into your life, because it's such a low tech, high impact thing. Because low tech, I don't need to have this complex device that's reading the natural wave mechanisms that are being interplayed into the environments that you're playing with. The gold will actually naturally, as a transmitter and resonator, is a very apt material, and essentially like almost key pipeline for how currents are manipulated. It'll bend to allow for connectivity across the card, right? And so I find that it works at high voltage standards and low voltage standards, and it mitigates for that factor. It's not just a straight copper plate, so it's not the case that we're impeding it and just substituting that blockage for the inability for the current to transmit across the field, right? It's actually creating a resonant feature for it. And that resonance is the goal here, because that's the actual intended purpose of that. Which, again, for a device that's under $500 and very usable across the board, I mean, as far as having it on me at all times, this is fantastic, right? And it's not even a device; it's a card that you can keep in your wallet. And the one thing I always say whenever we talk about this is, because it structures frequency fairly well, it does improve. This is the funniest. I am never making this statement, but Robbie, when we're at dinner, will always um, project. He'll shake the card above the food, and he'll slightly move the card through it, and it actually structures the hydrogen molecules, the water molecules in the food itself, and it makes it more tasty as an outcome for it. And
Yeah, yeah. A great like fun thing to do. If there's anybody here with grandkids, so you just want to play with your children a little bit, is just take two flowering plants, doesn't matter what they are, rose or whatever, and keep them 16 to uh, 18 inches apart. Um, Take the same water source. It doesn't matter to me whether it's filtered water or just tap water. One water glass, just fan the top of the glass or have the glass actually sit on top of the card for virtually seconds, less than a minute. And then feed one plant with the water that has been influenced by the field, and then use the other glass of water, same water source, fill the other flower, and just watch how the flowers mature. And it's remarkable, the difference
it,
in the growth, the vitality. It's just
we
so
have to
again,
we have to
all I'm
make
doing
a
is
picture
bringing.
study of that for
All I'm
sure.
doing is, yeah, we should do. You and I should do some time lapse on that and just bring it out, But all I'm doing is what I said I was doing from my intentions from the beginning of our talk today. Is I'm
Yep.
recruiting nature and putting it into devices. This is a device. It doesn't plug into a wall, but it's a device, and I'm bringing nature to you because we don't have time today in our busy world and lifestyles to go out and actually commune with nature the way nature actually organized and intended us to do. So earlier today, one thing, if we date back to the days of Moses, Jesus, and Buddha, we lived in caves, we lived on the land, we lived in tents. We woke up to the sunlight. Our pineal gland was activated, which started our systems rocking as soon as the sun rose. And as soon as the sun sets, it reverses by creating hormones, melatonin and serotonin, that self-regulate your cellular energy. What do we do today? We wake up by alarm clocks. Okay, that's a man-made thing. Okay, where time is a man-made thing. Okay, and so what I do is just look at the way that the modern world is advancing, and as much as I love all the advancements, I also see the other sides of it and what we can do to create in a modern world a natural progression so that we live healthy to the first and last breath, and that we don't accept mediocre life as we see it today. Like, I feel that in many ways we're racing to the middle. What I'd like to do is race to the top. And so by communing with nature, I hope, and by developing devices that allow us to have a more natural progression, recruit more natural systems, allow the body to do all the heavy lifting, I think that I get there. And so with every challenge, with every new tech, there's also remediation and there's ways for us to fix it so that we can stay on task with our own abilities to commune with nature. And so
I
that's
think
part
that's
of us.
I think that's a beautiful statement and a beautiful principle. And as far as intent goes, I think you're fulfilling it fantastically.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you so much for getting on. And so what I think what we'll do is we'll set this up for part two, and we'll hopefully have another part that we'll broadcast out here, and we'll get even more people on because I know,
Yeah, of course.
and
It's all
and
good.
that way we can go over because I think it's there's so much to go over at this stuff, and I'm sure that it'll be a thrilling experience. So for everyone who's tuned in for this, I look forward to seeing you in the second part, and thank you everyone who showed up today. I'm gonna
Yep.
pause the recording now, and I appreciate you guys.